going on, guys? Going to do a little ultralight fishing, or technically I guess extra ultralight fishing with my Daiwa Presso. I've been fishing this somewhat regularly and it is just an awesome combo. Really makes these smaller fish feel like they are a lot bigger than they actually are. And we're going to be throwing around a little Trout Magnet, so 1/64 ounce jig head, 1 1/4 inch soft plastic. I think this is my third time fishing the same soft plastic, so 3 fishing trips for that little guy, but it's torn up, but it should still work. So we'll see if we can make 3, maybe even 4 full fishing trips out of that. So we'll throw that thing around. It rained a ton today. Water levels are a little bit higher, but there should still be some nice bluegills in the shallows. So let's give it a shot and let's see what happens. All right, there's our lure of the day. I know these videos might get a little repetitive because I fish the same lures all the time, but I just love fishing these little things. Super light, super effortless to fish, and basically any fish that is in here just absolutely loves this little soft plastic. So we'll swim it back pretty slowly. We'll twitch the rod tip a little bit. That was a little bite, but I get tons of little nibbles from little 4 or 5 inch bluegills, but they're just slightly too small to actually get hooked on this. But yeah, a couple twitches of the rod tip while we're working this in, and that should get us some fish. All right, so I haven't been here too long, maybe about 20 minutes, but I fished all the spots that I normally get at least a handful of nice sized panfish in by now, and all I've gotten were those hits from those tiny little bluegill. So I wonder if within the last week all of the larger panfish might have moved offshore or something, because so far there's no sign of them. There we go, fish on. First one of the day, let's go. It's a nice sized bluegill. Come on up here. All right, not much of a fight out of this guy, which was a little surprising, but I'm glad we got one, because it took me a while to find one of these guys. I thought all these guys might have moved into deeper water, but if we got one, hopefully there are more out here, and this is a very nice size one. So the water, even close to shore over in this area, is a little bit deeper than over close to shore toward the left where I started fishing. So maybe they're just hanging out in slightly deeper water, even if it is close to shore. So let's see, there's another 1 or 2 fish hanging out over in this spot. Yes, there are, sweet. All right, might have found them. Another okay sized bluegill. This one's a little bit smaller. Yeah, so certainly on this smaller side, this one's kind of that in-betweener, larger than a juvenile, but still not a full adult. Some of the adult colors are starting to come in on this guy, but we might have found where these somewhat larger bluegills are hanging out at. Alright, so those 2 fish might have been all that was over here, because after several more minutes there is nothing else going after this Trout Magnet. We got 2 on like my first 2 casts here, and then nothing after that. There we go. Oh, it's a little largy. All right, tiny little largemouth bass. I didn't even feel the hit. I just saw my little pink Trout Magnet disappear, so I knew I had a fish on. and this little guy was on the end of my line. So probably the smallest fish of the day, but let's get this guy back anyway. There we go. Got one. Missed a couple bites right here. What is this thing? Little bluegill. Alright, I had about, I don't know, 3-4 little bites in this one spot. I'm sure they were all from fish about the same size, maybe even a little bit smaller because he's tiny. I mean, that mouth on this guy is, I mean, it's big enough for a trout magnet, but still pretty small, so they're just biting the tail. But third fish, let's get this guy back, and let's keep going. There we go. Ooh, that's a bigger one. Ooh, that's a nicer one. See if we can pull him in on this extra ultralight. Oh, that's a nice fish. Oh no, he's off. Oh, did he break me off? Yeah, he broke me off. I think that was a nice bass. That's kind of the risk you run when you're fishing really, really thin 3-pound fluorocarbon. Oh well. Oh, that's another nice one. Nowhere, actually he pulled pretty well to start, but it is not a nice one. Wow. He pulled really well to start, but it's just an average sized bluegill. Yeah, so I don't know if this is the biggest fish of the day, probably close to that first one we caught. He pulled so well to start, but I mean, it's a nice sized fish, just nowhere near the size of that one we just lost. There we go. There's another one. Not a big one. There's a little drag tool, but it is a tiny bluegill. Yeah, so very small bluegill. Not sure what happened within the last 2 weeks, but 2 weeks ago and also last week, there are a lot of really, really nice sized bluegill in the shallows. This week, it seems like it is all smaller bluegill. So we'll get this guy back. Hopefully we get one more nice sized one. There we go, fish on. Let's take a look at this guy, probably another bluegill. Right through all this algae. Come on up here. All right, slightly bigger I think than the last two fish, but still not a big one at all. So yeah, I think we're gonna get all these smaller fish today. Here we go, fish on. This one, again, feels pretty good. He's pulling well. Hasn't pulled drag yet. Nope, nope, nope. Oh, he's all over in the algae again. I think he's a little bit bigger, though. Let's get him on through this algae, hopefully. I hate this algae. It's tough to get fish in. I mean, he's not fighting anymore. Feels like an okay size. How do I get him in, though, with this 3-pound test? I guess nice and easy, huh? Alrighty, let's see what is under here. All right, and here's why that fish felt bigger. It's not really much bigger, maybe a little bit bigger than the bluegills, but it's a mine cichlid, and these guys usually fight pretty well for their size. So that guy's going back. Now I gotta clean 3 pounds of algae off of my line. Alright, so that is going to do it. Rather tough day out here. I got, I don't know, half a dozen fish, which isn't too bad for an hour. A fish every 10 minutes is okay. Everything came on the trusty Trout Magnet there. But the last 2 weeks that I was here, I fished here the last 2 Fridays, and I caught a lot more larger size bluegill close to shore. And unfortunately today I didn't get really any large ones. Even some of the bigger ones were still probably smaller compared to the smaller fish that I caught my last couple trips. So the larger fish might have just kind of moved offshore, not really sure, but all those fish still put up a pretty good fight on this extra ultralight Daiwa Presso. Unfortunately, I lost the big fish of the day. It looked like an okay sized bass, 2 pounds, maybe even more. But yeah, that is gonna do it. Fish for maybe another 20 minutes after the mine sick, but got nothing here at the end. So hope you guys like this one, and I will see you next time.